Superman is the most divisive movie I've seen in I do not know how many years. It's very dividing for audiences, and by the end of this review, you're gonna understand exactly why. Welcome in, everybody. People have been asking me over on the live streams here on YouTube and over at twitch.tv/vampex13. People have been asking me about the spoiler discussion, and guess what? It's finally here. We're gonna be talking spoilers in this video, so hold on to your hats and get ready because I'm about to break it down for you.
Break it down for me.
First things first, let's start off this review like we did with our spoiler-free one. We're going to talk about Superman. Now, I think the important thing when we talk about Superman in terms of the character and how he's portrayed in this movie, something we need to consider, because a lot of people have a lot of thoughts on this, is the fact that Superman is a character who has been around for almost 100 years. That's a long time. That's a lot of stories. So what that means is that there are so many different depictions and versions of this character that I feel there are a lot of opinions that people have, and really there's a lot of validity in a lot of these different takes on Superman. Superman has been so many things throughout his history, whether we're looking into Elseworlds or even if we're talking about the main continuity in the comics. I mean, we have Prime Earth, we have New Earth, we have the Silver Age, you know, there's just all of these different depictions of the character, and that's just within the comics. There are also TV series, live action TV series, animated ones. There's other movies. So we have a lot to take from. And for many people, they have this idea of what Superman means to them or what they want to see from that character, what that character represents. For me, Superman has always been a character that has represented the best of the best when it comes to heroes. He represents hope. A hope that we have for our future, a hope that we have for each other, and a hope that we have for humanity, for ourselves. He just represents goodness in everybody. He's all about saving people and kindness. He is about consideration, manners. There's a sort of earnestness to him and honesty. And I think this film really embodies all of that when it comes down to the script, James Gunn's direction, and of course, David Corenswet's performance, which was honestly giving me some Christopher Reeve vibes in the best way possible. And I don't mean that like it's an impersonation, I just think the energy is similar. And I really liked that because I think Reeve was my favorite Superman before this movie, and now, I mean, it might still be Reeve, but David Corenswet's he's really great. I really feel like he embodies the character so well. I think the thing that I really like about this movie, though, is that it is encouraging us to discuss and debate what Superman represents to all of us, and I love that about the movie. I haven't felt this excited to discuss some, superhero media that is, either televised or a movie since X-Men 97. X-Men 97, it's like every time we got a new episode, I was here and I was so ready to discuss with you all the other fans, all the other nerds, and for us to all gather and just dissect and pull apart the episode and talk about what we loved and what worked for us, what didn't work for us. And I think that's also what's happening with Superman right now. And what I'm excited about is just that everyone wants to talk about it. That's great. Whether or not we agree, that's not really important. It's just everyone bringing their own perspective to the discussion and sharing their thoughts and their feelings on this film. It's been a delight just to share that with you all. So thank you for those of you that have been discussing with me, whether it's in a live stream or whether it's in the comments, and please keep doing it. I love hearing all of your thoughts on the film, and I love sharing my own with you. Of course, when it comes to the way Superman is done in the movie, it's not just about Superman, the character, and the personality and what Superman embodies here. It's also the fights that I really liked for him. Now, for some people, I think it's not going to work because some people think of Superman as guy that punches hardest, and this film is less focused on him punching the hardest and more focused on him mitigating damage while also trying to defeat someone, while not punching so hard to do irreparable damage, but punching just hard enough to neutralize the person. And that's why I also think that this depiction of Superman is so interesting. Superman is such a powerful character. Oftentimes in the comics, he's touted as being one of the most powerful characters of all time, which means it's hard to make the fights interesting with him. So what I like about this is when you put the focus on Superman saving people and trying to make sure that, buildings aren't completely demolished during the fight, it adds a lot of layers to just how precise and how powerful Superman has to be in a variety of different ways, because sure, he can punch the hardest, but at the end of the day, if you're eliminating your villains, are you not really just becoming the villain at the end of the day? You know what I mean? That's like a villain move. So I like that he's trying to hold back, and that has been something that's also been established in the comics before, that Superman does have to pull his punches, and that, you know, these first few years of Superman, because we already know he's been operating as Superman for 3 years at this point, seem to be about him not necessarily like rising up and getting stronger. It's more about him trying to figure out where that balance is. So I like that that was the focus. I also feel like the way that Superman's power set is showcased through this is really cool, because it's not just about punching, you know? It's also about his speed, it's about his agility, it's about his endurance. There's a lot of elements where we talk about, you know, the sun powering him, how he uses that. There is his heat vision, there's his frost breath. There's a lot to Superman, and he has a lot of really great powers and a lot of really great weaknesses that you can utilize. And they really, I feel like, utilized a lot of what he has going for him. We even got a reference to the hypno glasses, and I kind of love it. It didn't do everything, but, you know, there's a lot to explore, and just based on what I saw here, I'm excited to see where the character will go next, if we get to see more of him, and I think we will, and I'm hopeful that we will see him again really soon, based on how well this film seems to be doing thus far. It's not also just about how Superman is portrayed here, the power sets, and also, we gotta talk about everybody else's power sets, but we'll talk about that in a bit. The visuals in this movie I thought were so well done. I did not realize how much I was settling for mid to subpar like CG until I watched Superman, because it just feels so polished. There are moments in other superhero movies where I've been taken out of it because of, you know, the green screen or the CG, and I always want to give the people that are building all of this stuff the benefit of the doubt, because I know a lot of the times they are rushed, they're under pressure, and I just feel bad for the animators a lot of the times. However, in this movie, it really feels like they took the time to make sure that everything was polished and wanted to bring their A game. It feels like a lot was riding on Superman, which I kind of knew going into it. Like, the film is aware of that, and so they really tried to make sure that everything looked and felt great. And I agree. I feel like a lot of the visuals in this movie were fantastic. Not just that, but also the colors in the film. It's very vibrant. It's very optimistic, almost, the color palette for it. And I feel like if you take a still, it gives you a sense for like the type of energy. It is a very colorful film, and I love that about it as well. I think it ties in well with the depiction we get of Superman here, who is more light and fun and hopeful. There are some things that people seem to be frustrated with in this film, which I find to be a bit confusing, like the idea of Superman as an immigrant, which, by the way, is not something that's new. Some people are acting like James Gunn just came up with this. This is something that has been established before in the comics. The fact that some people are saying Superman's not an immigrant, he is an orphan. I think people are getting Superman and Batman mixed up. Batman's an orphan. His parents died, and you know, he has Alfred, but that's it. And Alfred is like a father to him, but he's not technically his dad. Superman lost his parents on Krypton because Krypton was destroyed. They sent him off-world. He landed on Earth, and then he was adopted and raised by his parents, by the Kents. And as a result of that, he's a representative of Earth and America a lot of the times. So that's who Superman is. And he was adopted by people from Earth, and he is from Krypton. He's literally an alien from another world. I don't know how much more immigrant you can get. So the fact that that's part of the movie, I think makes sense. I think it's just, unfortunately, we live in a world where everything is political now. And because of everything that's happening in the world, everyone's interpreting it as like a political statement. But I just see it as actually being a part of the lore of Superman. It's been a part of his origin story for a long time. And while there are some stories that attempt to retcon that, for the most part, that's been the status quo. Came from another world, landed here, was adopted and raised by parents on Earth. And I think the cool thing about this film is the overarching story for Clark is such a relatable one. It's really about him getting a sense for who he is as a person, deciding what kind of hero he wants to be as he connects with his idea of what home really means to him. At the beginning of the movie, we see Clark recuperating in the Fortress of Solitude, and he has the message played that his parents sent with him in his pod. And the message is obviously Kryptonian. He doesn't even speak the language, so it has to be translated to him. He doesn't even have the full message. And of course, we get to see Jor-El and Lara Larvan reading this message to him. That is his comfort at that time, because he's thinking of himself as being this alien from Krypton. And over the course of the film, he comes to realize that who he really is, of course, is just the guy from Kansas. He's a Kent. That's who he is. And I love how at the end of the movie, after going through this entire journey and questioning, what he represents, when we get that whole twist with the fact that the message possibly had some sinister tones to it, where the Elves are basically saying to Kal-El in this message that they want him to dominate Earth, to rule Earth, to take many wives so that the Kryptonians can repopulate here on Earth, and they're hoping he'll be able to dominate this world. That whole idea makes him question about who he really is and what his purpose is in life. And, is he really the good guy he thought he was? And I love that when he has that conversation with his dad on the farm, his dad basically says to him, you know who you are. Like, you're my son, and I'm so proud of the man that you've become. That moment made me so emotional in the theaters, because it is something that we all kind of go through, this questioning of who am I, and am I really a good person, and what does it mean to be a good person? And do you get to decide who you are? And ultimately, I think the answer that we come to in this film is yes. Clark is a good person because he's a Kent. He doesn't have to represent the stuff that his parents from Krypton wanted for him. He's grown up here, and he's become who he is now through his experience. And it's his actions that speak to who he is, not anything that anyone else says about him. A very important message in a world where, everyone, especially on the internet, everybody wants to label you or tell you who you are, or tell you what you should think. We live in a world that's very much like that. So to see him come full circle to the end, where when he's resting in the Fortress of Solitude, the sort of message that he chooses to play instead is all of these images of his parents and growing up on the farm with them. I just thought that's just such a beautiful symbol of who Superman is, and this sort of struggle within him to decide, is he of Krypton or is he of Earth? The answer is both, of course. But ultimately, he spent more time on Earth, and you get to decide who you are. No one else gets to tell you who you are. Lex Luthor, don't tell Superman who he is. I think that twist also kind of rubbed some people the wrong way. And it's also interesting to see, this is another thing I've been seeing people say online, this idea of, the Elves, this message from them being sinister. And people are saying, it's character assassination. I can't believe they would do that. How could they ruin Superman's parents like that? First of all, we don't know if this message that they recovered is even accurate. I mean, it was done on Earth. It wasn't done on Krypton. So we can't confirm for sure. Of course, everyone says, these tech nerds would not lie to us about the message, but do we know that it's even accurate? Are they even able to really recover it? And also, let's not forget, it's coming from Lex Luthor. So I know it's being validated by other people, but I would still be questioning the fact that Lex is the one putting that news out there, you know what I mean? And then the other thing is, even if there is a sinister meaning to the message, you have to consider, the perspective of the Elves. This is one of the last surviving members of Krypton that they're sending out. To them, this is the future of Krypton. So everything is riding on Kal-El. And the way they're looking at it is that if you, dominate this place, that's the only way that we can propagate so that Kryptonians can make some kind of return. But even if we, accept that as being super messed up, which I do think it is super messed up, even if you're examining it from their perspective, the Elves have kind of been shady before in the comics, guys. Like, it's definitely in there. So when people say this is all a new thing, it's not a new thing. I think it really depends, I guess, on what you've been reading or what you're familiar with, but I kind of loved the idea that we might get to see Jor-El as a villain, especially when I saw him being played by Bradley Cooper. So when we got that twist, I was like, wait, are we going to bring Jor-El back, and is he going to be evil? And I'm kind of excited. And then unfortunately, that didn't happen. But part of me is still hopeful that we'll get to see more of, you know, Krypton and more of the Elves. I would be here for that. I would be here for House of El. I think Bradley Cooper as Jor-El is a crazy cast, and I wasn't expecting it in the movie, and it was a delightful surprise. So I hope we do something with it. Whether or not the Elves are evil, I don't know, but I'd be fine with it either way, to be honest with you. And it's not just about Superman here, okay? There's a lot more people in this movie. Is there too many people in this movie? Maybe. However, I think ultimately the ensemble cast works because everyone is beautifully woven into what's going in with Superman. And the reason that we have such a good supporting cast here that makes sense with the character is because it's really all about their relationships to Superman as well and their belief in the character. So everything kind of ties back to Superman, even when we're on journeys with other characters. Lois is obviously very closely tied to Superman. Even when Mr. Terrific decides to join Lois to go save Superman, I think that's really more about Mr. Terrific's relationship with Superman, even though he doesn't want to admit it. Even Lex being against Superman, he's completely obsessed with the guy. So every character that we have in here feels like it has pretty close ties to Clark, and I thought that that worked beautifully. It also sums up why Superman is such a great team player, because people just love the guy. You just want to be friends with him. You can't help but root for him and want to believe in him. And I think that him having a support team here kind of with the Justice Gang showcases that. It showcases the belief that everybody has in this guy. And even when he is being rescued, the other thing is some people are seeing that as like it maybe makes the character seem a little more dependent on people, but I would say that Superman probably would have got out of that on his own. He didn't really need anyone to come save him, but it speaks to the strength of his character that he is the type of person that inspires other people to want to help him or to help others. And speaking of Lois as well, I feel like that's one of the highlights of the movie for me. I loved Rachel as Lois. I love the relationship that we get between Lois and Clark here. There's so much chemistry between them. Even when the two are arguing, my favorite scene I think in the movie is actually the interview that Lois does with Superman. I love how at the beginning of the film they kind of just drop us right into everything that's happening, but that whole conversation kind of establishes everything you need to know about the conflict that we're just coming out of, where Superman got involved but he didn't really think it through, about Lois's feelings towards Clark, how she loves the guy, how she respects the guy and believes in him, but at the same time she is worried for him. She is concerned that he might be making some of the wrong choices. And she's a strong-willed person. She's not afraid to say this to him. She's not afraid to confront him. And that's the type of person that also Clark needs. He needs someone to ground him, and that's what Lois does. So it really establishes what their relationship is. You get this sense that even when they're fighting because there is so much deep love there. You really only have, I think, fights or debates or discussions with people when there is a sense of passion. The passion comes from a place of us really loving something. So when you have an argument with your partner, good arguments with partners anyways, usually come from a place of you really caring about the other person in the relationship, and that's why you feel the need to say something, right? Because you want what's best for that person. So Lois isn't trying to say these things to Superman to hurt Superman. She's trying to help Superman to be even better at what he does, because he should be considering all of the sides of this, because that's how everyone on Earth is going to look at it. So he needs to think about that. He needs to think about the optics of a situation. There's so much sexy subtext between them that I also feel like it's odd when people say things like, why would Lois even go to help Superman when the two of them were about to break up? It's like, well, I don't know if you were seeing the scenes, but I feel like you really get, even just from the way the lines are delivered, not even as much from what they're saying. Sure, they're on the verge of breaking up, but Superman also just confessed that he loves Lois. And I could tell in that scene that Lois loved him too. She's conflicted because she doesn't know how this relationship can work. But is it because she doesn't love the man? No, she loves him deeply. She believes in him deeply. So of course, even though they're just about to break up, as she later confesses hilariously to Mr. Terrific, who seems to really not care about that, even when she confesses this to him, you can tell that it's like she's conflicted about it, because she's like, oh, we kind of were about to break up, but you can tell it's because she loves him. Obviously, she's going to go save him. She does want to be with him. It's just about figuring out how will that work. And that also comes full circle too when he confesses his love, and later they have this quiet moment after everything has been settled, after the dust is settled, and she says back to him that she loves him too, to just resume their conversation. And I thought that was so freaking sweet and really sums up the relationship between Clark and Lois. I think they completely nailed it, and I ship it to like beyond this movie and out through the universe. I love Lois and Clark, and this movie just made me love them even more. So yeah, Lois is great. Everyone in this movie is great though. I mean, Edi Gathegi as Mr. Terrific. I am only somewhat familiar with Mr. Terrific through the comics. I know about his tragic backstory. I know he's a super genius. I knew about the T-spheres. Love the part where Lois calls them circles and he corrects her on that because they're three-dimensional, so they are T-spheres. I think that they showcased his skill set so well. The fact that he has all of this technology at his disposal. The fight scene that we get with him kind of evokes a little bit of a Yondu vibe, which obviously makes sense because James Gunn did Guardians of the Galaxy. But I was saying it's like Yondu turned up to 15 because there are levels of calculations that Mr. Terrific is doing that Yondu is not. Like Yondu is feeling it out, and Mr. Terrific, it's like every move that he makes in a fight is like a chess move. It's like he's playing 3D chess and thinking of every element of this fight happening around him all at once, which makes him such a powerful character, even though he's not like a guy that's powerful with his fists. He doesn't need to be powerful with his fists to be one of the best characters in the movie. And that's what I liked about that. I mean, also, I feel like Metamorpho is really great in the way that we showcase how he can really change into anything and how widespread his power set is. I loved that. And how he is the one that is able to actually even hold Superman at bay because he can turn into kryptonite. Oof, that is so powerful and just so cool getting to see everything that Element Man got to do in this. He only gets a little bit of time, but I really hope we see more of him. I really need to go read more Mr. Terrific and more Metamorpho now that I've watched this movie. I love also when movies make me want to read. That's a good sign, I think. I also feel like Nathan Fillion was perfect as Guy Gardner. He is a hero at the end of the day. He is trying to save people, but he doesn't care what other people think of him. He has a bowl cut and he thinks it's hot, and that's all you really need to know about him, as Nathan Fillion said. That is the type of character Guy is. He's a jerk, but he's still a hero. The score is also amazing in this. I love that they used the Superman score from the original movies. It's so inspirational. It's so uplifting. The soundtrack is great, and I definitely get the sense, I mean, James Gunn has said that he likes to play the score for people on set. He likes to play the soundtrack on set. And he'll actually play, parts of the score that are going to be in scenes before they go to film the scene so that it can be in the actor's mind when they're doing the scene. I think that's so smart, and it really creates this beautiful synergy between the music and what's happening on screen in a way that some films just don't click like that. The movie just drops us right in, however, and I feel like there are good and bad things about that. What I liked about it is I like that this film doesn't feel like it needs to hold our hand. We're dropped into this time where Superman's been operating for 3 years. There was this big political conflict that he got involved in, and now here we are. And we really don't get a lot of explanation. The movie kind of challenges you to keep up with it, but it really reminded me of just how lazy my brain has become, because for the first little bit, my brain was like, whoa, I gotta pay attention. The movie's not gonna tell me everything. I need to figure it out through scenes and character interactions. Yay, I enjoy when I get to use my brain when I watch something, so I liked that element of it. I don't think it'll work for everybody. I mean, if you didn't know who Superman was, this might not be a great way to start a film. The good news is Superman is a global phenomenon, so I feel like unless you've been living under a rock for, 80 plus years, you probably know who Superman is, so I think we can skip kind of to this point. I do think there might be something that would have been enjoyable for us to explore in regards to Superman's conflict about whether or not he gets involved, but at the end of the day, it kind of sounds like it wasn't really a question for him of whether or not to get involved in the political conflict, because like I said, Superman in this movie is all about saving people. So if there's lives at stake, if a squirrel will be harmed, Superman will be there. He will get your cat out of a tree. He is not, above any of that. He will help anyone that needs help, so he doesn't question those things. He just takes action, for better or for worse. However, the whole political landscape of this movie, I think, is a little bit awkward in terms of the tone, because it mirrors so many things that are happening in the real world right now that it kind of feels like the movie's trying to be grounded at times, but then is larger than life. So those are two things that are conflicting with each other. I don't think the film is actually intending to be super grounded in the real world, however. I think that's why they made everybody kind of feel bigger. Like Lex is literally a villain that could be like twirling his mustache. Nicholas Hoult brings a lot of dimension to the character. He's a narcissist who's obsessed with Superman, I think, on every single level. I think he wants to be Superman. He wants to destroy Superman. I think a part of him loves Superman. So there's a lot going on there, but in terms of just how evil Lex is, like, he is just evil. That's it. There's no redemption for that character. And I think when it comes to even the political kind of villain that we get in this, it's a similar idea. These are just bad people doing bad things. So we're not supposed to think too much about it, but because there's stuff that mirrors what's happening in the real world, you can't help but think about it, and then it feels kind of shallow. But I don't think it was really trying to say anything explicit about that. The problem is that we live in a world now that is somewhat a parody of itself. This is also why I feel, not that I think the film is trying to be a parody, but why parody is kind of dead a little bit as an art form right now, because things that are happening in the real world are so big, it kind of detracts from any parody you could try to do, because it just feels too real. And that's kind of what happens with this film. Sometimes it feels too real, but then it's not grounded enough. It doesn't take things seriously enough. So it feels at odds with itself in that way. I don't think it was aware of how that would come across to audiences, but even I felt it. So tonally, it's a little weird, and that's one of my criticisms. Also, is this movie too comic booky? Because it is so, it's almost cartoonish at times. I think it fits perfectly. I even felt that, some of that political stuff that we're doing, to me, I could understand. I feel like they're just trying to make it like a comic book. And unfortunately, even when we do stuff like this in comics, it doesn't always translate well. So it kind of makes sense that it didn't feel as satisfying in the movie, nor does it usually feel as satisfying when we do it in comic books. And I think the reason that I'm kind of okay with it is because it feels so comic booky, so I want to give it a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. I like that it feels like a comic book movie. I like that it feels like a superhero movie. I feel like it's doing all of that stuff in a good way. It's just the world that we're in today, everything kind of becomes political now. You can't really get away from it. And I think when we're making movies like this, we need to consider that. However, I think the best parts of this film in terms of the superhero elements and the comic book elements is also in the details. There's so many little references, little Easter eggs. One of my favorite ones, it's very small. It's like an offhand comment. At one point, they call Superman a Martian, I think, and Superman says, no, I'm from Krypton. And to me, all I could think of was, wait a minute. Are we saying what I think we're saying? Martian Manhunter? Are you coming to the DCU? I really hope Martian Manhunter is, and I might be reading way too much into that, but there's a lot of stuff like that in this movie where you can read way too much into stuff, and where there's weird references like the hypno glasses. So yeah, a lot of fun little details in here for you comic book nerds out there like me. And I'm sure especially if you're a huge Superman fan, which I'm not even the biggest Superman fan, I'm probably more of a Batman fan, there's probably tons for you in this movie. Ultimately, this is a movie that brings a sense of hope, and it kind of helps me to rectify a question I've been asking myself lately. Do I have now superhero fatigue? I watched Ironheart recently, and it resonated with so many people. I was questioning, why isn't this resonating with me as much? What's going on here? Am I just tired of superhero stuff? And then I kind of came to the realization that I just think I feel like I've gotten so much of it lately, I'm kind of getting a little maybe bored. But this film got me really excited. And I think it has to do with something that James Gunn has spoken about. This idea of superhero fatigue being a thing, but more being a thing because every project that we've been served recently kind of feels like it's ticking the boxes. Like the same stuff is happening again and again. So when you keep doing it on a loop, it becomes stale. And that's not just within the superhero genre, that's within any genre. And he talks about this idea of that happening across film. And it's coming from a place of studios wanting to make something that feels safe. It's done well before, so we'll do it again, because to take a risk means you could lose money. And it's a time where it's very uncertain for all of us, I think, in regards to funds. And so studios are worried about that. They want to make sure they get people to the theater. And so if they take a risk, what if they're wrong? However, if you don't take risks, you don't get rewards. And so that's why it's important for films like Superman to exist today and to try to push that envelope. And I think that's what James Gunn was trying to do with this. And I think it worked because a lot of us are discussing it. A lot of us have differing opinions, and I love that. My only other criticism is that while it's an ensemble cast, and I feel like we got a lot of characters that were well showcased, I wish we got more Hawkgirl. I just feel like Hawkgirl is in this, but she doesn't really do anything, and I love Isabela Merced. I think that's a great cast. I'm hoping we get more of her in Peacemaker Season 2, because I just felt like, why did we even have her in this if she wasn't going to do much, you know? I think also the fact that it's so James Gunn, I like James Gunn, so for me this isn't too bad, but I was worried that it was going to be grating on people, and I think it is for some people that just don't like James Gunn, and I was worried about that for the DCU since he's in charge of it. However, I do think Supergirl, we have a bit of a different creative team. I believe we have a different director and writer that are going to be there, so I'm hoping that as we continue to expand in the DCU, James Gunn will, you know, do what he does best and then let other people come in and just kind of produce and be there to help facilitate the creation of stuff, be the guy that's passionate about the comics, you know, give input on things like lore or details, but not necessarily be the only style that we get, because this film is very much in the James Gunn style, which works better for certain moments than other moments. Overall, I want to give this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think it's the more I reflect on it, the more I find things to like. So it's near perfect for me. There are some things, like I said, that could be improved upon, but overall, I like it. And I like what it's doing for us, getting us excited, getting us discussing whether or not we loved it or whether or not we hated it or whether or not we're like, I like some things and I dislike some other things. I love the fact that we're discussing it. That being said, let me know your thoughts on the movie down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. And until then, friends, stay nerdy. Bye. And if you like when I talk about superhero stuff, check out this.